Come
When you
on.
play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die.
Warning, this podcast contains explicit language and spoilers. This is Behind the Iron Throne, your unofficial Game of Thrones cast.
Hello, Thronies. Welcome back to Beat It. This is episode 162, recorded August 2nd, 2017. Holy moly, we're getting further and further into the month, and that means we're going to get less and less episodes of the Game of Thrones, and that just hurts my heart. But you know what makes me happy? A couple of things make me happy. My special co-hosts who are enthusiasts of the Game of Thrones, I love them to death. Let's start with the one, the only, the man that rides in the Millennium Falcon. And if you're watching live, you can see the Millennium Falcon on my shirt. Oh, yeah. Him and I go around picking up ladies in the Millennium Falcon. He is the one, the only, the man with the Valyrian steel Gatling gun. Yardley, what's up, my friend?
Hey, I'm doing outstanding, man. Look forward to talking about this great episode.
Yes, it's going to be a lot of fun. And we also have another great person joining us on the podcast who is extremely active on our social media and writes some of the greatest blog posts this side of the Mississippi. That's right. You know her, you love her. She is the mistress of Whispers, Andrea.
Hey, everybody. How are you tonight?
Super-de-duper. Thank you for asking. I'm glad to have you on the show.
I'm glad to be back.
Next up, this man needs no introduction, but he's getting one anyway. He is Lord Duckdarian of the Featherfoot brothers. He is a complete knucklehead, and we love him to death. He is General Jonathan Stomas Starklever, king of absolutely nothing but trash cans. What's up, buddy?
What's up, Chris? How is everyone doing tonight?
Exciting. Very exciting to see you, my friend.
Thank you, man. I'm glad to be here. We're going to have a great show tonight, people.
Okay, and of course we have the fourth head of the Targaryen dragon, the Dovahkiin of the show. She is amazing, and she does breathe all kinds of blue laser beam fire. Trin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. And you know nothing, John Stomas.
Nice.
If you guys want to follow me on Instagram or Twitter, you can find me at Dovahkiin Trin.
Awesome. I would like to remind everybody as well, you can follow everything we do simply by going to BehindTheIronThrone.com. And our Patreon button is there as well, so you can tap the button, go to Patreon, donate to the show, which will guarantee that we keep recording podcasts after the end of Season 7. So show us your support, and we'll show you support right back because we love you all. All right, and it's before we get into the content of this show, we're going to be reviewing the Queen's Justice even deeper than we did in episode 160. Just a couple of quick mentions. I want to thank Kyle Foster from Azora Hype, a great friend. Great YouTube channel. Make sure you check it out. He's been a great supporter here, and he's been giving me great advice on our own YouTube channel. Love Kyle. We're going to have him on an episode very, very soon. And I hope everyone had a chance to listen to our episode yesterday, our bonus episode, where we had Aziz and Ashaya from the the History of Westeros podcast. That went very well. They're just amazing people, so much fun, and hopefully we're going to collaborate with them even more. But one last thing before we get to the content, something very special. One of our very first generals of the Nerd Army for the Total Nerd Takeover Studios is a man named Jimmy McGee. Jimmy McGee, who we all lovingly know as Goat. He is General Goat. Tomorrow is his name day, so I just wanted to give him a big shout-out, tell you we love you to death, my friend. All the support means everything to us, and have a great name day. Don't get too drunk, and have a good time. We love you, my friend. All right. That being said, it's time to get to some of this content because, wow, oh, wow, this scene at Dragonstone did not go the way I thought it was going to go, and I'm kind of glad. We talked about this in the short episode, but I'm curious to hear what my panel has to say. So when Dany and Davos meet for the first time, Yardley, what are your thoughts about this scene?
You know, I thought it was great. I also love at the very beginning when we got old introductions of Tyrion and Jon. It was always good to see them together in scenes. I think they play off of each other well. And I thought it was interesting that when they were walking to go see Dany, some of the things that they discussed, including Sansa essentially growing up and coming into her own, I thought it was pretty cool that Tyrion gave credence to Sansa's concerns about Jon coming himself and not sending an emissary. And the only other thing that I have to say that really jumped out to me was the statement by Tyrion that by a general rule of thumb, Stark men don't fare well when they come south. And Jon responds, true, but I'm not a Stark. And then you cue the Targaryen dragon flying overhead. So I thought that that was pretty cool. And I definitely liked the camera work because it seemed to be a standing camera job. And I thought that whoever that was did a great job. And I thought that everything worked with Tyrion being a pretty much level-headed person to kind of get Jon Snow ready for what he was about to see.
That's awesome. Now, I didn't get a chance to tell Andre and Trin this, but I got to switch you guys in your rotation because surprises later on. So, Trin, I'm curious to know what you thought about this scene. And, of course, Davos, who I think is we both love Davos as the character. Him and Missandei in their announcements of their lords or their kings and queens.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting that Davos started speaking on the beach with Missandei, and I think that Davos knows a whole lot more than we give him credit for. He obviously has said, "I'm not a learned man," multiple times in the series, but he's sailed all around, having been a smuggler or a trader or whatever, and he knew the island of Nath and a little background of that, and that has butterflies. Well, the butterflies actually are deadly in Nath.
Ooh,
And
yikes.
and him talking about the fact that it was a beautiful place and full of butterflies. I've never been there myself. He had to have heard the stories. So I'm not sure if maybe he had some sort of like ulterior motive, not necessarily in a negative way, but he was just sort of like, these people, there could have been some like colorful foreshadowing or paralleling that they're a lot more dangerous than you think. It might look all beautiful on the outside, but they've got some dangerous tendencies here, so we need to watch our step.
Nice. Danger, Davos. John, I know you love this scene. What did you love about this scene?
Just the chemistry between Tyrion and Jon. You know, first off, Tyrion goes, "Jon's the best. Welcome the bastard of Winterfell," and then Jon's like, "Dwarf of Castle Rock," and then they smile. And even when they're walking up that little stone steps thing, and then he mentions that he's not a Stark, and then the dragon flies right over top of them. I thought that was awesome. You know, Tyrion mentioning Sansa and being like, "I never consummated the marriage. I never consummated," and John's like, "I never asked." All that stuff was cool, and even Davos talking to Missandei, and Missandei having nothing to do with it. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, definitely. That was a great scene. Watching Jon and Davos duck down, and Tyrion's like, "You never really get used to that." Or, it was a really good scene. I definitely enjoyed it. I just got done rewatching the episode, so I got a lot of stuff in my mind right now. But I'm curious to know because Andrea picks out a lot of good details. So, Andrea, what kind of details have you picked out for this particular scene?
Well, there's so much. The one thing that really stood out to me, the arrival on Dragonstone, and it's been more than just John's arrival, it's been the arrival in general of anybody who's landed on Dragonstone, is that there's this rock formation that's coming out of the water, almost like a spine or a tail that's kind of going up gradually and getting bigger and bigger as it gets closer to like the actual island itself. And it's really reminiscent of an actual dragon's tail or dragon spine. And I'm not sure if that path continues and it turns into the steps into the walkway which lead up to Dragonstone. But I thought that was really interesting. Again, I agree with Trin. He did Davos so cute, trying to, break the ice and, get in there with Missandei and, try to make a friend really fast. And she was just like, "Oh, you're telling me all these great things. Yeah, I was sold from there. Thank you very much." That was interesting to me. And so he was like, "Wow, this place has changed a lot. He just doesn't have a way with ladies there." And then I agree with Yardley when he was like, that's true, but I'm not a Stark. And then Drogon swooped in to say, hey, right away. You know, it was like, I thought it was Viserion for the longest time. And then Gisela and I were talking, and she had me go back. I had this great image still, and I went and looked back at it, and I was like, sure enough, that's Drogon stopping in and be like, that's right. You're not a Stark. Hello, how are you? So I thought that was fantastic too. And also, it was really interesting seeing the look on Jon's face when Drogo swooped overhead, and then they switch back to Miss Andy really fast, and Tyrion's all, "I'd like to say you get used to it, but you never really do." And Miss Andy's smiling like, "I did." So yeah, that was really interesting to me too. I like the whole opening scene, and then obviously seeing the familiarity between Jon and Tyrion, and then automatically Tyrion bringing up Sansa without even being prompted. You know, talking about how, you know, does Sansa miss me? And I think he was trying to be clever, but it's a really tender subject for Jon, knowing everything that Sansa's been through so far, you know? And then Tyrion automatically feeling like he had to reassure Jon that he never touched her. And I think that that's Tyrion still feeling like he's not worthy of anybody who's highborn or of that breed, because he has been basically subjected to whores and prostitutes his whole entire life, and no one's ever really wanted him for him. I want to see where that goes for sure.
Excellent points. Yarley, did you want to make a comment about that?
You know, what's interesting is I think one of the biggest changes that Sir Davos was probably speaking on was not that long ago was a bunch of people were getting burned on that same beach.
Fair enough.
Yeah, we forgot about that. Well, I forgot about it anyway. But yeah, I guess it doesn't seem that long to us, but for
It's
their
been years.
perspective, yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to move on to the chat room. Trin, what kind of comments are we having in the chat room now? If you're just joining us on the podcast and you're wondering, what the hell is this guy talking about, chat room? We do a live show on facebook.com/Behind the Iron Throne. If you join our Facebook page and, of course, our group, Club Beats It, you can dive in deeper with us. We have so many great conversations going on. And, of course, you can join us when we go live in our live chat and ask questions during the show. And we'd love to just see everybody there supporting us, because we are #BeTit. Okay, Trin, you're up.
Juan Carlos said it's sad that only 4 episodes are left. Was it ever revealed why HBO or GERM wanted GOT to end at season 8? Does anybody want to answer that? Anybody in particular?
I can say that
John?
it is sad.
Chris?
I'm definitely going to miss the show.
Was it ever revealed? Was it ever revealed by HBO or GERM?
Oh, yeah.
It actually was talked about by Dave and Dan. They said they would like to do as many seasons of Game of Thrones as they possibly could, but the idea of dragging Game of Thrones out just specifically because it makes a lot of money would be a disservice to the actual story. They wanted to get it wrapped up so that they could move on to other projects, because just like with actors, they're going to get typecast as well. You know what I mean? On, you know, filming certain things. They felt like they could do the show justice by getting it wrapped up in 8 seasons versus carrying it on out. And I mean, I understand. I respect that. I also think it goes back to, you know, the same things that Yardley and Chris and John and everybody else have been talking about for however many years, and at least as long as I've been listening to the podcast, is that the longer the show carries on, the longer it's going to take George to publish these books. He's not going to publish anything while these shows are still being produced and being put out. That's the bottom line. It doesn't make any sense for him financially to release these books while the shows are still being produced, because he's still making just as much money on the shows as he would be on the books. I mean, I don't know actually that for a fact, but it has more to do with the fact of them not wanting to drag something out just for the fact that, you know, it makes them a lot of money. They wanted to get it done and over with in the time frame that they have, and really just, you know, nail it while the iron's hot, versus, you know, people losing interest 7, 9, 10, 12 seasons in.
Oh, that's an excellent answer, and I agree with you 100%. And I will miss the show, but I really want to get to the next books. I really do. And it takes George a long time to write them. I want the books now, especially because Roy Dotrice, I want him to read them again. But what are you going to do? Okay, so excellent. Any more comments, Trin, or should we move on to the next scene?
There's a lot of comments. I'm trying to weed through everybody's and read the questions, because, you know, I want to make sure we get everybody's questions. Shauna Walker says, who else really doesn't like Daenerys as much this season? I think, Yardley, are you on Team No Daenerys?
No, well, I mean, anybody who's been listening probably knows that I'm not the biggest fan of Daenerys, but I have some good things to say about her in this podcast to kind of balance out some of my disdain.
I can say honestly, for me, I liked Dany last season, and I was so excited for her to get here, and I really want to like Dany this season. But the way that her and Jon Snow, and I know it made sense for the show, it just like she kind of I felt like she reverted back to being uh, kind of like being I don't want to say egotistical. I mean, I know she has all these rights and stuff, but she got a little crazy on Jon Snow, and I think that there was uh, like a standoff there, and I don't know. I was hoping that it was going to go a little bit differently, quite honestly.
She won't let you go all in. For some reason, like you try, and then she'll do something that'll make you say, why the hell do I want you to be on the Iron Throne again? But uh, she's all right. I've got some good things to say, though. I think people will be pleasantly surprised.
Okay, are we good to go on trend? Awesome. Okay, yay! We're going to go on to the next scene. Dragonstone. We're still at Dragonstone. Now we got Melisandre and Varys talking. What could the future possibly hold here? Now, Yardley, you and I have said many times on the podcast that we really like Melisandre. Um, and I'm starting to like her even more now that she's humbled.
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting. She seems to be more entrenched in her faith, and we always wondered what would be the next steps for this character, considering all of the things that, sometimes went right, and as of late, there are some things that have gone terribly wrong. So we find out she's going to Volantis. I thought that the conversation between her and Varys was interesting, mainly because I think in the second episode of this season, we were talking about, do we all buy into Varys being all in with Daenerys? And just the fact that he already is freaked out about magic and, sorcery. He's trying to push her out, and Melisandre knows that her destiny lies back in that country. And the fact that she kind of spooked him by saying that, I'll return one last time. I have to die in this strange country just like you. It makes me wonder if Varys is thinking that she knows something about what he saw in the flames when he was younger that made him really hate magic to begin with. So I'm very interested in how that's going to play out. And it also lets us know as viewers that this whole thing with Varys and how they set it up in that second episode, we might have some pretty interesting surprises around the corner.
Yeah, and I feel like I do feel like that she's somewhat humbled, and she's not quite as forceful as she was earlier when we first were introduced to her when she was with Stannis. She definitely seems to be calmed down some, but still has a good. It looks like she still has a good, strong amount of faith. But I'm interested in what Trin has to say about the about these two characters.
Well, what's interesting is in this specific scene, I've seen a huge shift. Like you just said, like she's humbled. Especially last episode, we saw her say, "Oh, I made some mistakes as far as my what I saw in the flames, and prophecies are really iffy." And in this scene, she does say, I truly made some mistakes as she was reflecting on those things. So you've seen Melisandre very much take a sort of a switch stance in, her aggressiveness towards her mission in the Lord of Light. Whereas I saw Varys in this scene and it completely changed my view on Varys. I didn't question him or his loyalties to the crown or any of that stuff before. But when he said, I think Melisandre started the conversation and said, "My time whispering in the ears of kings has come to an end." And his reply was, "Oh, I doubt that. Give us common folk one taste for power, and we're like a lion who tasted man. Nothing is ever so sweet again." And then she says, "Neither one of us is common anymore." When he said that, though, I thought, you have this taste for power now, and you've come up the ranks. Varys is be like kind of showing that he's a little bit different of a person than we thought he was. And I didn't question him before, his loyalties before, but because of this scene, I'm starting to question them.
Well, just remember when the lion tastes man flesh. Woo! Sorry,
Yeah, and that's why you're a Lannister, right?
That's it. There you have it. John, your
Shame.
turn, buddy.
I think Varys either doesn't trust Melisandre or doesn't trust Priestess. Period. I wonder if it was the Red Priestess who chopped his ding ding off. I agree with Yardley on Varys seeing something in the flames. I also think Varys and Melisandre will meet again.
Yeah, I thought that we knew that it was a male wizard because he had him in the box. Remember in season 3, was it?
Mm, yes, I think it was
Yeah,
3.
he had the guy in the box and he had his mouth sewn shut, and that was the guy he had waited and being patient and found him and got him. And I wonder whatever happened to him. And I want to know what was said in the flames. But we'll have to defer that to another episode because it's Andrea's turn to let us know what she thought of this particular scene and good old Melisandre and Varys.
Well, I'm kind of like the black sheep out of a lot of fans is that I actually really do love Melisandre. She's easily one of my favorite characters, which is interesting because I hated her at first. But I was thinking about this, and it was a good point about the sorcerer who cut off Varys's parts and whatnot. There's a couple of questions on: do we think that Melisandre was the sorceress who did that? And the answer is no, because it was a man. 1 second.
Yeah. In the meantime, if she gets back here real quick, you want to go with your follow up real quick, Yardley?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I have to say about Melisandre is I do think that for the most part she gets a raw deal. I think that we hold her to a higher standard of getting everything perfect when nobody that we've seen in this series is perfect and has a perfect track record. So to me, I don't necessarily think that anybody should abandon the things that Melisandre has to say, even though we know and she knows that there have been some, a downside to some things that she might have thought that she saw or that she thought were going to come into fruition. But I don't think that she has to be perfect. I'd have to say this: if I had to choose whether to have her on my team or not, I would always choose to have the Red Priestess on my side.
Definitely. It's funny
Yeah.
that you say that, Yardley, because one of the comments in here was from Armani. He said, "For all we know, it could have been Grey Worm she saw." So she's talking to Varys about the predictions about, well, I'm supposed to die here and you're supposed to die here, and I think that's what Armani's talking about. She can't really capitalize on her sights anymore because she has made so many mistakes. So really, everything she has to say will be with a grain of salt.
Okay, Andrea, you're back. You want to continue with your opinion on this?
Yeah, I was trying to say that I went back and I looked at the scene with Arya and Melisandre, and she says, "I see darkness in you, and in that darkness, eyes staring back at me, brown eyes, green eyes, blue eyes you'll shut forever." Now, I did go back to try to look and see if I could nail down Varys' eye color in the show. Colin Hill actually has blue eyes. So that was interesting because Melisandre, oh no, Colin Hill actually has brown eyes. But Melisandre has blue eyes, and so does Littlefinger. However, green eyes Tyrion has. So I was trying to see if that would tie up any loose ends, help us figure out who the three eyes or if there are multiple eyes of those colors. And I definitely think that Varys is one of those three eye colors that Melisandre is alluding to. And we know that Melisandre hasn't met back up with Arya yet, so that means that Arya is her last stop because they will see each other because Melisandre said that they would see each other again. So I'm wondering, is Arya going to be the one to kill Varys? And for what reason will Arya be the one to kill Varys? And is Arya the reason why Varys was so nervous about Ned? So I'm interested in that.
Wouldn't that be something? I would actually kind of like to see that. Although I do like Varys, but I'm afraid that he's up to no good. Andrea, real quick, I know this is a little bit out of rotation. I just have a quick question for you. Do you think that they're going to bring the Blackfire thing up, or do you think that they have time to show Varys as a traitor? Is there time in the series left for that?
They're throwing so many curveballs at us right now. I wouldn't be surprised to see that little monkey wrench thrown in plans. It all goes back to that conversation with Kinvara. If we serve the same queen, then there's no, we're not enemies or something to that effect. So which made you question, is he actually really serving Daenerys? And then there was a lot of questions about who told Euron about the Greyjoys and the Sands going back to Dorne. You know what I mean? And I'm thinking to myself, it was just easy luck. You know, a bunch of ships flying out. You know, no dragons leaving Dragonstone. It was a pretty easy guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But are there really that easy of guesses going on in the show? I mean, doesn't everything have like a reason for everything at this point? So I'm interested. I mean, it's obviously possible that Blackfires could come up. I don't know how they would bring it up at this point, based on the fact that we haven't actually had any Blackfire. What am I trying to say here? References in the show at all, but it's possible.
Good point, John.
I don't think we're going to see Blackfires this season. I mean, we would have had some hint in the past seasons. So, and as for, I mean, everyone knew, like even Jamie knew where they were landing. They're landing at Dragonstone. So Euron could easily attack the Greyjoys from there.
Okay. Excellent point. Anything from the chat, Trin?
Yeah, we've got a lot of people who have really great points on here. Renee says, I love Melisandre's comment about bringing ice and fire together. I know it's probably fan service, but it basically confirmed ultimately this story is about Jon and Dany, which is a great point. Jennifer Roth Stillman says, the actress was very pregnant at the time of production, so they would have had to film around that if she was to play a bigger role, which is true. You can kind of see that in that scene. And Carrie Quinn says, I'm glad Melisandre owned up to her mistakes, or the mistakes she made. Eric asks, who is the traitor in Dany's camp? Because everything she does, Cersei has been 2 steps ahead of her. That is a great question. John, do you want to take a stab at that one? Who is the traitor in Dany's camp? Because everything she does, Cersei seems to be 2 steps ahead.
I don't think it's necessarily a traitor. I think it's just more like Jamie's. I mean, it's like common sense a little bit. Like they knew, okay, listen, it's easy. I mean, I think Euron was just waiting for the fleet to leave. That's why they got attacked. And I think with Cassie Rock against, I think Jamie kind of predicted that one. So I don't think there's a traitor, to be honest.
You know, I got to say in the chat, there is a really awesome name, Valeria. Did you see that? That's awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool.
If I was going to have a daughter, I think I'd name her that. That's
Absolutely.
awesome. That's an awesome name. Gold star to you.
Yes.
And thank you for joining us, everyone joining us live in the chat. Go ahead, Trent. Sorry.
Emily says, I'm 50-50 on Varys being a traitor, but why would he bring Dany to Westeros and provide such support just to turn on her for Cersei? I kind of want to answer that, and I think that there's this sort of theory going on. I sort of subscribe to that he might be a Blackfire, and it's a book theory. So I don't know if this would play out in the shows, but that he would be a Blackfire. So he's trying to put the Targaryens in power, but because he's from a branch house of the Targaryens, he's helping, but he's still has like ulterior motive because he's bitter. And that scene that we just saw where he was talking to Melisandre, talking about power, that one. So that's why he would do all of that and work all of that up.
Awesome. John, go ahead with your follow-up quickly.
If there was a traitor, Jon does not make it to Dragonstone. His ship's going to get attacked. That's all I'm going to say.
That's a good point.
That is a great point. Anything else from the chat? Okay, we're looking pretty good then. We'll go back. We're still at Dragonstone. The King of the North meets with Dany. Jon then gives the pitch for defending the North. Dany wants servitude, pursuit of her ambitions. Dany finds out the Martells and Tyrells have been defeated in battle. Yikes. Definitely yikes. Yardley, what do you think of this?
Yeah, we actually got a lot when this introduction happened, but I'll just highlight a few of the things that stood out to me the most. One of the things was Dany kept understating Jon by title, by calling him a lord instead of your grace. And I thought it was very humorous that Davos begged his pardon for his flea bottom accent and corrected it. Another piece of meat for the conversation was essentially one of my favorite quotes that kind of calls back to episode 1, where Danny says, "Don't judge a daughter for the sins of the father." And as we all know, John kind of flips that around and says, he doesn't necessarily have to be beholden to to old pledges of fealty from the past. I thought that was pretty cool. And I think one of the highlights for me and Amelia Clark was her monologue that ended with her talking about her having faith in herself and not gods or myths or legends. Even though she seemed kind of keen to the princess that was promised legend the episode before, she pretty much made it all about her picking herself up and everything being about her. And if it wasn't for her, she wouldn't be where she is now. And essentially, John's journey has been about serving others. He's in the place that he is not because he wanted to be there. He was put there by people who believed in him and thought that he could lead them. And they've seen him in action. He's had a little bit more skin in the game. So that's how he's there. So for me, I think that for Danny to kind of feel like, I guess what you would say, entitlement syndrome. I know that a lot of people aren't really fond of that, but I thought that Amelia Clark did a phenomenal job in her delivery. I thought she did a great job with subtle facial mannerisms that kind of went along with the scene. So I give her a lot of props. I thought that this scene had a lot of potential to be a disaster, mainly because of her, but she showed out, and I give her all the respect. And if she can keep up this intensity for the rest of the series, I'll keep singing her praises.
Yeah, that's excellent points. I feel like Danny made a small mistake here and went a little bit overboard on. I mean, I love the faith in myself stuff. I agree with that, but I think that because she's done a lot for other people, but I think she was trying to posture and preen a little too much. Say, hey, I'm the queen. I'm in charge. I think she let that affect her a little bit too much. Got caught up in the moment, in other words, and there was a lot of angry tension. There was a lot of tension in that scene. That's one of the notes that I wrote down. Trent, what are your thoughts on this, Your Grace?
I was actually kind of bummed out that there wasn't more positive chemistry in their first meeting. There was clearly a lot of negative chemistry going on. So it was sort of getting off on the wrong foot in that. But John, absolutely love him. He continued his just humble, polite ways. He kept calling her Your Grace, even after Davos corrected everybody in the room, just like Yardley said, and was like, this is the king in the north, and he is a king. And it did sort of reinforce the fact that Danny has had to struggle, and she explained her struggle in detail just in case anybody missed it. She wanted to make sure they knew where she came from. But there's so many Danny haters, especially because of this scene or mostly this episode. And I gotta say, coming from a female perspective, and I'm not all female perspectives, just mine. But when you're in a man's world playing a man's game, just like Cersei's doing, to be a queen or the first queen, because there haven't been any queens that are ruling as just the queen, not a regent type. But it's a very hard thing for her to deal with. So she has to be overly aggressive and she has to stand up for herself constantly. And so people are going to hate on it, but I think she has to do what she has to do. And I'm proud of her.
Awesome. John.
This is why I love Jon Snow and Danny. This scene was amazing. I knew John would never bend the knee to Danny. Kings do not bend the knee. He has a little bit of influence from Matt Mance Raider there. I've been looking for this scene for years. I feel John was in the right because he was chosen king by the North. He didn't ask for it. He was given. So there's no way he's going to bend the knee and be a lord. Davos is amazing in this scene. I got a feeling that John stopping Davos from telling him is gonna play back later, and I think when John tells Danny what happened, it's gonna bond them together. Overall, I mean, amazing scene. I think Danny is like, for her age in the show, to command such a powerful presence as a queen is amazing. And like I agree with Yardley, she was a great monologue from her. And I also love how she's finally like she's acknowledging that her father was a very, very bad man.
Excellent points, John. Okay, Andrea, you're up.
It's really funny because I feel like I'm the only person who sees this. When John starts talking about how his father fought to overthrow the Mad King, um, Daenerys goes, "My father was an evil man." Like, it was really hard for her to actually enunciate those words at the tip of her tongue. And it's not like she didn't know that Ares was the Mad King and that he was a terrible person. She's actually had these conversations multiple times with Sir Barristan and even with Tyrion, even with Yara and Theon for that matter. But this one time where she's standing in front of Jon and Jon's like, you know, your father burned my grandfather alive, you know, and my father fought to overthrow him. It was really hard getting those words off of the tip of her tongue, like she was choking on them for a minute. And it was, for me, it almost felt like it was hard for her to say because she doesn't necessarily know how true it is. And she knows that Ares is her father, or we know that she knows that Ares is her father, at least in the show. But then you switch over to the next scene with somebody else, and there's complete parallels between that person and Ares, you know, the Mad King. So it really seemed to me like she was struggling with those words versus, you know, I know my father was a bad person, you know. I really liked the initial reaction of Jon walking into that throne room. He knew he was going to meet a queen. He didn't know how old she was. He doesn't really know anything about Daenerys for that matter. He just knows that she has Unsullied, she has Dothraki, she has she's taken up residence on Dragonstone. She's a Targaryen, and he's going there to ask her for help. He walks into the room, and here's this woman who's equal in age to him, who's absolutely stunning. And the first thing he does is stop and just kind of look at her dumbfounded. And then she opens her mouth, and she just starts, you know, rattling off all the things that she's entitled to. And he's just like, oh, wait a second here. I'm not going to lose myself in this situation. You know, obviously she's beautiful, but my people elected me. I like that he stood his ground. I also agree that Daenerys owning herself and her facial expressions and, you know, finally not backing down and being the little child that, you know, she has been for so many seasons is a really big payoff for her. But a lot of the situation could have been avoided had she actually chose to address Jon like he was a leader of his people, and he chose to address her like she was the rightful leader of, you know, the Seven Kingdoms, or she was, you know, eligible to sit the Iron Throne. And he didn't deny it necessarily, but Daenerys has been dealing with people her whole entire life who feel like because she's a female that she's beneath them. You know, I can understand why she would automatically assume that Jon was going to be no different than them. But overall, I think that had he walked into that throne room and they just sat down and chatted it all out, everyone would have been like, what a waste of fucking time. You know what I mean? How often does that happen where two monarchs sit down to each other and they're like, okay, I agree with this. I agree with that. I agree with this. I agree with that. There's always going to be some sort of power struggle between the two of them. Overall, I'd say that the interaction was fantastic. I also really liked the visual storytelling where Jon is standing on the three-headed dragon, on the very first head of the dragon. It's a callback to season 5, episode 10, season 6, episode 1, you know, him laying in his own bloodstain. There was so much to take from the situation, and then the conversation with Davos and Daenerys, when Daenerys finally had to come up off of her high seat and stand in Jon's face, eye to eye as equals, and explain to him everything that she's gone through, and then all of a sudden Davos is like, okay, well, this is a familiar territory for me. Let me tell you about all the things he's done. And then he stopped being just some guy that was opposing her and started being a person who is fighting for almost the same things that she's fighting for. Only thing is that he's got a mystery now. So I like the scene a lot.
Excellent points. No, those are excellent points.
That.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the whole mystery thing. I didn't think about it like that. Like, that's gonna draw her in.
Mm-hmm.
Yarly, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, well, just to quickly piggyback off of what Trin was saying earlier in concerns of a woman in a man's world, that directly coincides with the same thing that Cersei has been talking about from the beginning, that, you know, she's been slowed down as well, in part for not having a penis. That's kind of been a theme throughout the seasons. And when Jon says, at the very least, that Dany is not like Cersei, if you dig a little bit deeper, they do have a lot of things in common as well.
Awesome. Trin, can you read the comments, please?
Yes. Eric Flores says Dany will go full dragon and will unleash the Dothraki on the Lannister in an open field. Dany saying Jon is in open rebellion simply because he was named king in the north is bullshit, says Renee. He was named that before she even left Meereen. If he's in open rebellion, it's to whoever is actually sitting on the Iron Throne. That's a great point because, he came in his kingdom before Dany declared her kingdom. So first come, first serve, right? I Eric says, will Tyrion remain hand of the king as he is 0 and 2? He got the sand snakes killed. He fell into a trap at Casterly Rock. Grey Worm and the Unsullies are stuck and their ships are destroyed. Thanks to Euron. Yardley, you want to take this one? You think he'll remain hand of the king since he's 0 and 2?
Oh, well, I'm going to have to say absolutely. I mean, we all know that he's probably better from a politician standpoint than someone planning battles and such, but you have to think of it like this. I don't think that Dany, after the conversation that she had with Varys, would promote him. I think that Tyrion has proven that even though he makes mistakes, he kind of covers his own behind with other decisions that he makes. So I think right now Tyrion is safe, but anything can happen, but I think she stays consistent with him.
Yeah, Valeria says, I was kind of confused. They talked about not being punished for the actions of their fathers, but she absolutely feel the entitlement through the actions of her father. That's a great point. Andrea, do you want to comment on that one?
I'm just not a fan at all of self-entitlement. I'm not a fan at all of self-entitlement, but I get it. Daenerys has faced insurmountable odds her whole entire life, but she's looking at Jon like Jon's been sitting in a High Lord seat his whole entire life, and he's basically just been given his throne based on his name, and he doesn't have a fucking name. And she does have this name that she's been writing on her whole entire life, and she's been, she's basically been, cast out of her own home and everything like that. So wanting to come back and take it back and make sure people understand that she didn't abandon her spot, she was pushed out of it, is important for her. And so I get it where I'm like that personally. I try to explain myself and I sound like I'm a know-it-all, and I'm not trying to sound like a know-it-all. I'm just trying to share my knowledge with people. You know what I mean? Daenerys she's not entitled necessarily. She's just fighting for something that she feels like she was pushed away from. And so it comes off as entitlement, and it's not meant as entitlement. And I think we really get this, the big picture here when Tyrion has to go back and remind Jon that he needs to learn about the people that he's judging before he judges them.
Excellent points. Awesome.
Yeah.
Keep them coming, everybody. Okay, moving right along, we have our good friend, the last not the last Greyjoy, but we got Theon getting pulled out of the water onto one of the Greyjoy ships. And this scene, I thought it was a nice, quick scene. Told the story. It was like bing, bang, boom, moving on. Yardley, your thoughts on this particular scene?
Varys had mentioned later in the episode that only a couple of Greyjoy ships had pretty much escaped the Fury. So I would assume that that's probably including the one that picked up Theon, which is probably filled with men who didn't try either. So were they dissing Theon for being a coward, or were they more understanding because they were there with him? So I'm just kind of curious at who was wrong. You know what I mean? Theon should be like, well, why are you motherfuckers here if you tried? You know what I mean? So that's kind of interesting. And I think logically, after all of this is said and done, probably the proximity where Theon is, he'll probably try to get back to Dragonstone. But we'll see what happens.
Awesome. Trent, what are your thoughts on this scene?
Hypothermic Theon. The poor guy was pulled up, and you could see he's super pale, and he is just on the brink of death. And I think poor Theon, I just really think, oh God, poor Theon. There's been so many times in this series that he probably wishes he was just dead, because his life has just been one torture session after another. And this is emotional and mental torture on top of everything else. I really feel bad for the guy. Nobody had that bad of karma to deserve what Theon's gone through.
That's a good point.
I mean,
at this
come
point.
on.
Yeah. And I just saw somebody mention Gendry, so everybody drink. I got my beer tonight. Yay! I'm not drinking that
Gendry,
that nasty Dornish swill. I got some Miller Lite. Which
Red
is still...
Arbor Gold. Oh.
I'm not drinking that ever again. Thanks, Arya. Let's see. Who is next? John, your thoughts on Theon. Boom.
Theon could do not. He couldn't do anything in that battle. I mean, it was over. I think Theon is gonna fight Euron for his sister because we see it in the. We talked about this during last year's when we talked about show picks, and we see Euron fighting Theon on a beach. So I'm hoping that happens because she's not dead. Yura's not dead yet, so maybe that is. And I still think Theon will play an important role for this upcoming season.
Okay, excellent points. Andre, what are your thoughts with poor on Theon?
Please let me know if you guys can hear me. By the way, everything sounds a little choppy to me.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
You sound great.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, I think that whole entire scene, him being pulled out of the water right after Daenerys asks if all of them are dead, isn't because she's like trying to make sure all of them are dead, because she actually hopes that one or more survives. But then Theon gets pulled up on deck and he goes, you know, is Yara dead? And he's like, no, she was taken by Euron. And he goes, oh, you saw her? And he goes, yeah. He goes, you didn't save her? And he goes, I tried. He goes, if had you tried, you wouldn't be here. And well, the point is well, neither would you guys be. So I don't think that they had any animosities towards Theon whatsoever. I think they understood that, you know, sometimes, you know, flight is the best way to survive. And ironically, I actually see this working in a repeated history kind of situation. Theon helps to save Sansa. Jon helps to save Yara. If that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That makes
I
a lot
can
of
see
sense.
that
Great
there's
parallel.
animosities in that situation. But Theon ultimately did do the right thing. He didn't kill his brothers. You know, he did help to save Sansa. And I think that ultimately that is going to pay off later on. I think that because of that and how important Yara is to Theon at this point, I think that Jon would basically do almost anything to help him, you know, moving forward once he gets all of his initial animosities out of his system. So I can see that totally happening. At some point, Jon's going to have to help one way or the other, whether it's, you know, defeat Cersei or help, you know, get, you know, Daenerys' allies back on track. He's going to have to help if they plan to band together. And he can't do that while holding animosities for the Greyjoys and holding animosities for the Targaryens and holding animosities for every other house that's ever wronged his house. So they all have to work together, and I think that that's how it's going to work out. I definitely don't see this as a situation where they're utterly disgusted in Theon. I don't see that at all.
Excellent point. Trin, what do you got for the chat?
Peter says Theon will end up killing Euron and possibly die in the process. That's good. David's asking, where did all the wood come from to make those ships? There weren't any trees on the Iron Islands.
They
John,
stole
you want to
them.
answer that?
It's called a plot hole by
No.
HBO. I mean, come on, man! Like to
They
build
could've
that many
stole 'em.
ships and that fast, and then where do they get all that wood? I mean, come on! Like, I'm sorry, plot hole. Please, plot
It's
hole.
okay though. We'll
Maybe they
enjoy it.
borrowed it from the Driftwood Crown.
See?
I think they paid the iron price, which was steal it.
Yes.
So
Exactly.
they,
Fair
they
Island.
stole a bunch of ships
Yeah.
from other people. Eric Flores says Jon and Theon warm reunion. That's funny because he had hypothermia, so
Get it?
maybe he'll warm
See?
up and go meet Jon.
That's a good one. Gold
Oh.
star.
Chris Innes.
Yay,
if-
Chris.
if-
Lord Tang.
If Theon attacked Euron, Yara would die, and so would have Theon. Live to fight another day. That's
I agree.
Absolutely perfect. Yeah.
Amen, bro.
Yeah. And let's see. I think that's it for all the. We don't really have any questions on this one, so let's move on to Euron.
Okay, Euron. Another scene I thought was kind of fun. I'm saying this episode was awesome. So Euron is got this big smile on his face. People cheering. Everyone's, oh yay, you're the savior. He's got a big smile, and I love him. And of course, he's not gonna lie. He is actually getting a hard on, which I thought was a great scene.
Except, why does he tell his niece that?
Oh, because he probably
Oh.
she's now his pet. At least that's what I think.
I was thinking.
Yeah.
I think that there's a
Yeah.
strong connotation in rock wife versus salt wife.
Oh,
I'm just saying it.
I like that. Okay, Yardley, it's your turn, buddy.
Hey, you know what? This scene was great, and Just to get right to the point, I think Cersei, for the most part, has every right. I'm not even going to say for the most part, 100% has every right to feel how she feels about the murder of her daughter. And she's 100% justified to want to extract vengeance. One of the reasons why Cersei brought up and reminded Ilaria about Oberyn and how he got arrogant and he lost, but her daughter was innocent because Oberyn had died. And for me, I think that there's
Oh, we lost your.
feel like a
Oh,
feel
there you
like
go.
a
There you
villain.
go. You're good. Sorry.
Oh, was I coming in?
Yeah, it just clipped out, but you're good. You're back.
Oh, yes, but in essence, she pretty much reminded her of the history of why they were there. And none of the things that she's going through had to happen. Sometimes sour grapes seem to have gone against her. So I would have to say that this probably would be the number one slot for when keeping it real goes wrong. Like she's the poster child for, you just fucked up.
Excellent points. I also love Euron up on the up on, as I call it, a dais next to the throne, and he's like, "Hey, I'm up here. I'm boss now. Look at me. I'm so great." Trent, what are your thoughts?
I absolutely agree with Yardley on the fact that Ilaria could have had a few chances to maybe not be so nasty and terrible to Cersei, and maybe, I don't know, lighten the punishment if there's a chance. I know we're talking about Cersei here, but still, she didn't have to do the things she did, and I think she absolutely deserved it. 100% deserved what she got as far as what Cersei dished out for her. I thought it was complete justice. Cersei had every right to do what she did, and if we're talking about karma and those kind of things again. And yeah, Euron was there. This episode was so great for me because I laughed out loud, like belly laughed really hard at a lot of moments. And Euron talking to Jamie about the finger in the bum was one of those moments where I was just like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. This is so funny. So yeah, this was a great scene. I loved it all the way around.
John.
Man, I don't know what to say about this scene. The bat pussy is dying. I love the bat pussy. This is interesting because, like, first off, I'm wondering if Yara is gonna die and how. I think her narrative's done. Euron's feeling a little cocky, which I think is gonna come back and haunt him. And I love that Jamie told Euron not too long ago they were flinging shit at Cersei, so he was kind of mentioning the fact that the crowd will just they'll just cheer for anyone. What I really love though is this season we're seeing a lot of callbacks to like sins of the father. This whole thing between the Martells and this Lannisters go way back to the Robert's Rebellion when Tywin ordered the death of uh, I can't remember Liara, Elia Martell and her two kids, and this is all just, and that's why Oberyn was hating him. So this is all like playback, even with Danny the Mad King. I'm loving a lot of the sins of the fathers coming back and really uh, reflecting on the decisions that are being made now, because all this bad blood between Lannister and Martell, it goes back to that. So I'm loving that. And man, that's Cersei. You are one evil. I mean, you're justifying what you did. You love your daughter, but man, like karma is gonna come after you.
Yeah, that's excellent point you have there, John. What did you think also, Andrea, about Ilaria Sands spitting right there in front of the Iron Throne, like just a bah, like ah? It's pretty it's pretty disrespectful.
Snake venom. I don't know. I'm here first and foremost. I think it was terrible that Ilaria killed Marcella. I think that Marcella was innocent in all of this. I also really felt bad for Ilaria because she was expecting Oberyn to survive that trial by combat. But just because Oberyn died doesn't give you a right to punish somebody else's child because he fucked up and got himself killed. And I've been saying this ever since that scene happened. How is she mad at the Lannisters when he volunteered to be, the champion for Tyrion? But it didn't stop me from feeling bad in the moment for Ilaria and for Tyene, for that matter. I have a lot of I have a lot of compassion for anybody who's hurting, or can feel that pain is coming but can do nothing about it, is helpless to it. You know what I mean? And you knew that Ilaria knew, and that Tyene knew, and Cersei was quite clear that she was going to do something about it. I mean, I really feel bad for mental games. At least with Ilaria, she didn't, torture Marcella. She just killed her. With Oberyn, he fucked up and he died, But Cersei, she's all about the long game, the head games. You know what I mean? So I actually didn't feel bad that I didn't think it was disrespectful that Ilaria spat at her. I think Cersei's scum, and I mean, a lot worse should happen to Cersei, to be quite honest with you. But I felt for her. I honestly felt for her in the situation, and everything else that happened going forward, was just a huge payoff. Watching that silent argument with Ilaria to Cersei. She had her mouth gagged. Me and Trin talked about this yesterday, actually.
Yeah.
Being gagged and not being able to say anything. Some of the best acting we've seen out of them, period, was her not actually being able to speak.
Yes.
And, that one tender moment where you killed my only daughter. Why did you do that? It was. I've seen it again. I've seen it before. I've seen it before in another scene, and it's slipping my mind right now. Where somebody was like, "Why did you do that? It doesn't matter." Oh, with the Hound on episode 1. How do you think they died? Death. Does it matter? It doesn't really matter. They're gone now. You know what I mean? So watching that whole entire thing play out, you can see. I mean, I've been saying this the whole entire time. Marcella was probably the one single most important child of Cersei's. Period. She was her first daughter. Joffrey was her first son. She didn't ever really care for Tommen in the first place. But watching everything go down, it was. I really felt bad for Ilaria. I also felt good for Cersei to be able to exact her revenge. But at the same time, I'm just like, oh, this was all so terribly done. You know what I mean? It was great. It was done greatly, but it was also done terribly. Also, I noticed that Cersei has every single one of her handmaidens chop their hair off now.
Yes. I'm glad someone else noticed that. I'm like, oh, we're seeing something here. I like that. There's a pattern. There's a pattern.
I actually.
Are you ready for your follow-up, Trin?
Yeah, I was actually going to say, John made a really good point when he was talking about sins of the fathers. And in this specific scene, I think John and Andre and I were talking the other day about this scene off air. And I brought up the parallel of, you've got Dany and Jon who are basically forgiving each other and forgiving, Jon was forgiving other houses of the sins of their fathers. So they're trying to make an alliance that way. You've got Cersei and Ilaria who have these like generations long grudges between their houses and what's going on. And Oberyn died because of his own pride, and Ilaria took it out on Lannisters because she thought it was like a Lannister thing, and they have had a household rift because of I'm drawing a blank. Thank you, Elia. I'm not Laria, Elia. They're very similar, but because of Elia and the babies, so there's been that household rift. But these two houses have not forgiven the sins of their fathers. As a matter of fact, it's tearing their houses down, and so that I think is a good theme to kind of watch and follow.
Okay.
Good point.
John, your follow-up real quick before we get to the chat.
I think the whole reason that the Martells hate the Lannisters is because they never really got justice for Elia and her kids. So I think that's why there's such hatred after all these years.
Okay.
I don't see why that would matter to Ilaria, but okay.
Go ahead, Trin, with the good old comments from the hashtag Thronies B-Tit community. Best ever.
Peter says Chris should cosplay Euron, a little eyeliner, and he could pull it off.
Oh, did you?
Do they even know? Do they even know?
I was making faces when you guys were talking, when you had Euron's picture up here. I was trying to match the face, but I may do that. I may do that for Comic-Con New York this year. I may go.
Carrie says it's rare that I cheer for Cersei, but Ilaria Sand deserved what happened. Absolutely. Let's see. Do we have a question? Chris Ennis says everyone in the show lives as in the morally gray area, so no one's truly innocent. Everybody gets what's coming to them, or for them to some degree. I don't know, Chris. I'm gonna have to say I don't think Theon deserved as bad as he got it. So yeah, everybody gets what's coming, but that was rough, man. What did he do before
Cersei was about to get what's coming. You know that, right? Get it?
Mm.
Get it?
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
Aw.
Come on. Come
Come
on. That was
on.
And
good.
as a matter of fact, Eric makes a good point. If she had any poison left, would it have been wiped off when Cersei went down on Jamie?
Oh,
Maybe
wow.
this is the
That's
first case
true.
of
I-
STDs.
That's
in
true. Ring around the
Westeros.
collar right there. That's ring
Yeah.
around the collar.
Oh,
That's terrible.
yeah, a good segue. Good segue into the next scene.
Yes, absolutely. Jamie getting his hobnobbed, and boy,
His
oh
hobnobs.
boy, and boy, oh boy, did Cersei grab a hold of his right ass cheek. Coster Waldau has, and this is NH, but he has a nice ass. So I hate to lead you in that way, Yardley, but the Iron Bank was awesome.
Yeah. Well, you know what? She liked Jamie for who he was. He tried to put on the hand because he was ashamed. She was like, you know what? Leave it off. You know, I want the real you. And my favorite part was definitely the Iron Bank. It was good to see them come back into the narrative. And essentially, with Cersei promising the Iron Bank their money back in a fortnight, which we know is 2 weeks, she's had the opportunity to go out to High Garden, you know, hopefully and get the victory, get their money and get them paid off. And hopefully, probably the plan for her is for the Iron Bank to maintain a relationship with them and to back them some more. So I think this is another high for Cersei. That's one of the reasons why she was excited with Jamie. But as we all know, the same thing with Dany is that there are going to be some hiccups along the way. The question is if some people can anticipate their particular being a particular hiccup along the way, and maybe there's preparations that can be made. But I liked Cersei in this moment. It just goes to show that she's on a little bit of a roll, man, and the Lannisters have a little momentum on their side, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, excellent points. Let's see, Trin, what do you think? Or do you think Cersei and John or Jamie are really in love?
Yes, I think that this specific scene, the way that it opens or closed, I guess we saw the you see the tenderness because I think Cersei came to Jamie when she was, I think you guys said this on Sunday night. It was like celebrating. I think Yardley might have said that this was like celebrating, her way of celebrating, and she's feels this overwhelming success. Jamie is looking at her while she's sleeping. He's ridiculously in love with her. There's no coming back from that. I mean, he had his sort of redemption arc, but I just don't see him getting out of her clutches because she's got him right where she wants him as far as forever loyal to her. So it seems right now. And it seems like he's just going to get lost without her. And I thought that was highlighted later on when he's talking to Lady Olenna in Highgarden that, she's going to be the end of you. And you could really see it in this scene. And then the Iron Bank comes in and Cersei plays the Tywin act, which is great. She does it wonderfully.
Yeah, excellent points. John, you're up, buddy.
I'm not sold on the Iron Bank helping Cersei. I think that gold, based on episode 4 trailer, that gold is getting hit, and Cersei's losing that gold, like most likely to Dany. And then I could see the Iron Bank leaving her. So there's that. So if Quenn is bad pussy, then Cersei is corrupt pussy because she is corrupting the hell out of Jamie.
Okay, I think you just like to talk about cats, John.
I like cats.
Get it? Pussycat? No? Okay, joke was lost. It was funnier in my head than it actually was here on the show. All right, so I believe we are on to Andrea. Your thoughts on this particular scene?
I was actually really interested in this whole entire thing. She finally felt like she had power. She went down there, she took care of business with Illyria and Tyene, and it was the very first real thing that she felt like she could actually accomplish. And then Euron made that comment, I gave you something that nobody else could give you, right? I hold on to that because that's important. No other man could give you. And then, so she goes upstairs and Jamie's, taking off his hand and whatnot, and he sees her come in the room and he immediately tries to put it back on. Now, the reason why Jamie tried to put his hand back on was because she felt like he was less of a person when he came back with one hand. And so he went and got that fake hand put on so that he could keep her happy. And she thinks it's all ridiculous in the first place. And this wasn't really about, for me, I didn't really feel like it was a tender moment where she saw Jamie and just wanted Jamie for who he was. I felt like it was, just a way for her, just to get it over with, because she wanted to continue her feelings of control. She just, exacted her revenge in the most intimate of ways for her. And then she came upstairs and she, got straight to business with Jamie. He tells her no multiple times. She just keeps aggressing him the same way that he tried to aggress her to feel like he was a man when he first came back to King's Landing. And it turned out, in a way that they were both happy with, apparently, but it just goes to, that she had to control him. And also I think that there was something about the idea of submitting to him as well. She got on her knees for him. So there was a little bit of give and take in that situation for them. And then I called the Iron Bank a long time ago. I'm not surprised that they showed up. I'm not exactly sold that he is willing to just forgive the Lannister, debts and whatnot. And there's, sorry.
So we've got a comment. Chris is wondering if we will see Dario in Westeros via the Sellswords Company. John, what do you think about that? Do you think we'll see Dario and as part of a Sellswords Company in the future?
No, I don't think we're gonna...
If the Iron Bank, is funding Cersei in this scene that we see, no?
Well, the Iron Bank says you'll get our... In the trailer, they said you'll get our support when we get the gold. They have to literally get the gold. I don't think they're getting the gold. I think it's getting, like I said earlier, and I just think it's too... I don't think we're getting the Second Sons. I just don't think we're going to get them. It's too much shit's going on this year for that to happen.
Okay. Any comments from the chat, Trin?
Yeah, Armani says all that redemption gone to waste. At the end of the day, Jamie is still Jamie, meaning shit will always be shit.
I told you, it's going to be redeemed. I told you.
John.
And many times I've told you guys Jamie can't be redeemed because Cersei is corrupting him.
Yeah.
He's not corrupted.
He's corrupted.
Eric says keep eye on Cersei's handmaidens. Later this season or season 8 when a faceless girl might go to King's Landing. Yeah, maybe. We'll see about that. Yardley, you don't think so?
No, there's no real narrative purpose for that as far as I'm concerned at this point.
Okay. All right. Robert says Team Danny needs to steal the gold Team Lannister stole before it reaches the Iron Bank. We need an Ocean's 11 in the next episode.
Nice.
Yeah. I love it. Okay. All right. And Steve says, heard something recently that the Mad King couldn't perform unless he burned someone first. Oh, that's a great book parallel. Now Cersei is kind of following the same pattern after killing the Sand Snakes and then wanting Jamie. That's I remember reading that in the books, that he would burn people and then go rape his wife's sister or something.
Terrible.
Wasn't that his MO?
Well, his sister wife. He burned. Rosart, who was his grand alchemist. He burned Rickard, and then Ares went and raped Rhaella, and then after the fact, he burned his hand Chesild, and then named Rosart his hand, and then when he burnt Chesild, he went and raped Rhaella again, which was the last time he raped Rhaella, ultimately resulting in the pregnancy of Daenerys. So yes, and then actually there's a huge parallel between Cersei and Ares, and also Qyburn and Rosart, who was the alchemist who basically assisted Ares in burning and torturing anybody he wanted to, and that's kind of what Qyburn is doing right now for Cersei. So there's huge book parallels there.
Oh, awesome points. Real quick, Andre, are you doing an after live show, or you have time to do that tonight?
I have plenty of time if everyone wants me to. I don't mind.
Awesome. If you guys would like to go even farther than this episode later this evening, stay around in the chat. Let Andrea know, and she'll do a special late night with the Mistress of Whispers. That's a good title. I'll hang around for as long as I can.
So not the after show after the after show?
Oh, now you're talking my language. So we're going to move over here to the Dragonstone again, where we have Tyrion and Jon. and they're having like a brooding battle. It's like a brood off. Huh? Brood off? Yeah? No? Yardley, what do you think? Break
I
it
like
down.
it.
Hey, you know what? The thing that I thought was definitely cool was both of these individuals reflecting on either bad decisions that they made or wallowing on a decision that's going on now that has the potential to be a bad decision. So I thought it's always a treat to get these two characters, but one of the things that made me kind of roll my eyes was the fact that John at a moment pretty much seemed resigned that this thing didn't go too well. And when someone has to tell you basically help me to help you, it shows that you've still got a lot to learn, you know. So I think that the scene worked out pretty well, but I'm kind of disappointed at John having to be told basically, dude, I'm trying to give you something to get a little something.
Okay, good point.
Yeah.
Trent, are you thinking fan service? What is on your mind here?
Yeah, this the fact that Tyrion says, I came down here to brood, and you're much better than that than I am at doing that. That was fan service. That was one of those moments in the show where I laughed out loud really, really hard because you have to be a fan. You have to have watched the show from beginning to end and maybe read some internet memes to really get the depth of these really well inlaid jokes that Dan and Dave brilliantly wrote that in. And I completely appreciate that and I love that. And I thank them because they've done that a few times in this episode and it was hilarious to me. So yeah, I love the brooding.
Yeah, absolutely. John, what are your thoughts on the brooding?
No one broods better than my boy Jon Snow, so there's that. Again, great chemistry with Jon and Tyrion. Tyrion's right. Jon needs to get to know Dany better, ask the people about Dany. Tyrion, I think Tyrion's trying to make Jon a better leader, and I think Tyrion has a good influence on Jon. So I love this scene. Jon has to compromise. So I mean, it's I love this scene.
Okay, great points. Andrea, how are you thinking about this scene? Do you think it was spot on?
I actually do think that it was a really good scene. I can actually relate to John though. Going back to something that Yardley said just a moment ago, Tyrion had to basically say, "Hey, I'm trying to help you. Help me help you. Basically, tell me what it is that I can help you do. But when you're somebody like John, who's basically been, at the bottom your whole entire life, a bastard, and nobody's willing to help you, and everyone's just kind of looking down on you because of your station, you get really used to accepting the word no. So fighting back becomes something that you just give up on at some point. You just learn to accept defeat and work and move on and try to make things work on your own the best you can. And that's what John's been doing his whole entire life. Again, he knows nothing, but he is also, a product of his own environment. He was base born. He didn't have any privileges. He didn't have people who would go out of their way to help him. So he got a no. He got a, you're absolutely ridiculous, or at least that's what he thought he was getting. And so he accepted that and he was moving forward. And I think that I can relate to that more than anybody as somebody who's completely independent. And it's because I feel like I have to be independent. I understand why John was willing to just say, all right, well, you made a point. It was too much to ask her all at one time. It was an unreasonable thing to ask. But also in his defense, he didn't really feel like he had a choice. He had no choice. He had to say what he had to say when he had to say it. And was it prime time? No, it wasn't. It was really stupid of him to release it when he did, but he didn't really feel like he had a choice to. And so how do you go back on that now? And then having to sit there and say to himself, if somebody came to me and then he's like, oh crap, had I been in her situation, I would have thought that they were crazy too. And Tyrion thought that I was crazy. I mean, that it was crazy. I thought it was crazy when he was saying that it was crazy. And now I know that it's true. And I love the part when he was like, that's a really good question. I know it's a really good question. I'm hoping for an answer. That was really good for me. But again, it was the learn the people. John just assumed that Daenerys was like everybody else who was looking down on him because his last name was Snow. Even though he was a king, he was still a bastard. He was still nobody. You know what I mean? And so he didn't have any faith that Daenerys would be able to step outside of herself and see him for whatever it was worth. And there was that, she's been fighting monsters just like you, to protect people from, monsters, and John was forced to, again, step outside of himself in his inner turmoil and see, that maybe there is more to the situation that meets the eye. And I don't think he was necessarily giving up in that moment when he started to walk away. He was more like, okay, well, you've given me something to think about. However, he was like, I'd like to go home. He had a point. I get it. If nothing's going to change, if I'm not going to get her help, then there's no reason for me to be here. I need to be back home. I need to be preparing the people for what's coming for them, because me just sitting here, hanging out, playing house isn't doing this for me. So, I mean, I can see it from both ways. I really like the fact that Tyrion is actually kind of playing the mediator between Jon and Dany. He's acting like a hand to both of them. He's kind of being the harmony between two of them. I said this to Trin yesterday, too. If Daenerys and Jon are ice and fire, then Tyrion's the harmony, which creates the song. And I think that he's what's going to help temper both of them. You know, Jon's cold, cold ice nature, Daenerys' fiery, fiery, hot nature. I think that Tyrion is going to be the balance between the two of them, and I think that he plays a really important role moving forward. So I actually really like the scene a lot.
Excellent points. Trent, what do we got going on in the chat room?
Armani says, thanks, Ned, for putting him at the bottom, talking about Jon and the fact that he did kind of have to come from nowhere. Angie makes an excellent point. She says he also had a really bad pitch when he came to pitch his idea. Did he not think of how to present his idea? Chris, what do you think about how he could have presented it? He had
I'll tell you.
quite a long ship ride. He could have thought about it a little better.
I'm thinking the same thing, Trent. I'm on a boat. I'm riding with a bunch of guys. I'm thinking to myself, this is important. We have the battle for life and death coming up. I better have a good pitch. And you have one of the best hype men in the Seven Kingdoms. Davos has proven to be an amazing hype man and speech giver. And he probably should have pulled a Stannis and just stood there and said nothing and just let Davos do all the talking.
They clearly weren't on the same page because Jon had to stop him earlier.
Yes, which I like that. That was a nice little zing that was in there. I really thought that was cool. But another thing I really liked about this question is that it also shows that Jon is doing the best he can. And I think he let his his emotions get a little bit clouded, like that standoffishness. You know, remember kind of like when he, at the Battle of the Bastards, he, rushed on his horse and shot out there to rescue Rickon. It was one of those things where he kind of let his emotions and that whole standoff get the better of him. But I got to give him some credit. You walk into this room, it's designed to be imposing. And it's designed for you to feel shrunk down and to really look up at the person sitting on the throne. So I got to give him, I do agree with the comment, but got to give Jon a little bit of credit for being in that position.
Mama Cheryl said Jon didn't expect to hang around so long, so he needed answers quickly. Which is true. He was like, I'm here, I need this, I got to go. Like, he's in a hurry. Yeah. And Armani says, that's it, the three heads, the ice and the fire and the harmony between them. Oh, yeah. Yes. That's I think where Andrea was going with that.
Yeah, and I tell you, when you said harmony, Andrea, that really got me thinking. It was an excellent point.
In the Song of Ice and Fire.
Yep.
Yeah, Trin had to actually school me a little bit because I said melody first, and then she was like, wait, hold on. Let's talk about this for a second. And I was like, you know what I'm trying to say? You're picking up what I'm putting down, right?
That's what makes us all a great team.
So the ice and the fire would be the melody, and he is the harmony. Yeah. Tyrion is the harmony. So yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the comments for this round.
Awesome. Okay, so let's throw Jon a bone. Let's throw him a bone, or let's throw him some dragon glass. Yardley, what are you thinking about the dialogue here in the scene?
You know what? I thought that it was pretty cool, this conversation between Dany and Jon, where she pretty much tells him that she's going to give him a carrot and let him mine the dragon glass, and also provide some support with mining it and getting it where it needs to go. So I thought that was a pretty cool gesture. The carrot is always better than a stick in a lot of situations. And the fact that Dany is in need of allies, the potential for Jon Snow to help is there. However, as stated in the episode and through Jon Snow's journey is more aligned with stopping the undead and not to fulfill Dany's ambitions. I think that something big is going to happen, since compromise has also been a theme in these episodes to kind of make everyone pivot to the real threat. So I thought that it was cool, but the thing that stuck out to me the most was when Dany said that her dragons were a sight to behold, and she said, "I named them from my brothers, Viserys and Rhaegal, but they're both gone now." And I totally believe that those two dragons will be biting the dust in the near to near future.
Trin, what are your thoughts?
Ah, that makes my heart hurt, but that is pretty solid foreshadowing there, Yardley. I have to say, I don't know if I completely agree with it, but that's a pretty solid point. This scene, I thought it was funny banter. Tyrion is always at his best when he's got a lot of dialogue, and when he's talking to Dany and he's kind of explaining, well, yeah, it sounds kind of crazy. They just want this glass. You're not even using it. Like, what do you what do you care? And then when they're on the stairway, and it's just Dany and John, uh, that was the moment in the whole show where I saw the chemistry start to change between them, and I really saw Dany sort of give that girly look where she looks into his eyes, or I don't think he's looking back at her, but she gave him that look where now she's got some seeds planted in her heart where she is fond of him. She sees his character and integrity. And I think Dany is at that moment going to start to fall for John. And I'm really excited for that because I'm shipping them.
Yay! All right, John, we already know you're shipping them. But did you think that it was a good idea for Tyrion to tell Dany, like, look, the dragon glass means nothing to you, but it means everything to John? And then, of course, the conversation they had when they were looking, overlooking the water.
Yeah, love this scene. Tyrion again giving Dany good advice. He knows he needs John as an ally, and the dragon glass is a good gesture of faith. And I think John's gonna realize that I can't get the support of Dany and her dragons to fight the Night's King if she's losing the war. So I think John's going to help Dany fight this war. And yeah, though that scene, I'm shipping those two too. Like these guys need to. I wouldn't be surprised if before John leaves that Tyrion or someone mentions like a marriage between these two to unite the houses. So, I mean, I just love these two, and like Dany's giving girly eyes to John, so that's awesome.
Okay. What do you think about the everyone loves doing what they're good at, and John says, I don't.
Oh, I think it was absolutely perfect callback again to Rhaegar and the conversation that Daenerys was having with Varys and Selmy, where Viserys said my brother was good at killing, and Barristan said he never liked killing, he loved singing. And then when she said everyone likes doing what they're good at, and John said he doesn't like doing it, I think that she was just expecting him to be like any other person, that he just was a man and he enjoyed war. And even Daario Naharis took pleasure in, war. He loved killing. And John doesn't have any pleasure in that whatsoever. He just wants to bring peace. It was a really nice parallel, and it actually opened up Daenerys' eyes a little bit more inside of who John was. I think it made a huge difference to her. And then also there's that mystery still that's playing in the back of her head. What was that part about? He took a knife in his heart for his people. Did you get that? And then Tyrion just kind of blowing it off like it's a flight of fancy. You know what I mean? And I think that's just Tyrion trying to not give her too much too soon. I'm sure Tyrion's curious too what that means. It's not just a figure of speech. Somebody just doesn't say he took a knife in the heart for his people. I think that that definitely piqued Daenerys' curiosity. But then John set himself completely apart from anybody else when he said he doesn't enjoy killing. So that was really good. And then the last part was when she said she was going to allow him to have the dragon glass, and he was like, "Thank you." And then he turned around and he looked at her again and he goes, "So does that mean you believe me?" It was like saying, "Yeah, I really appreciate the fact that you're going to let me mine this dragon glass. It's really going to help, but it would mean more to me if you're helping me because you actually believe me versus the fact that Tyrion told you to just help me. Because you not helping me or you not believing me is the same thing as you not helping me, because even if you give us all the weapons in the world, it doesn't mean that we're gonna survive, that we're gonna succeed. If we don't succeed, everyone dies. So I'd rather have your belief and your support versus just your support but not your belief, because then it's just a hollow gesture. So that was really interesting to me, seeing like how the disappointment on his face when she was like, "You better get to work, Jon Snow." She was trying not to reveal too much of herself in that moment, but at the same time, Jon was like really hoping that she, actually took him seriously and didn't just see him as a crazy person. I think that just meant that he felt like he had more work to do. But then there was also that huge parallel inside of the stone drum where Daenerys is standing in front of that dragon and it's all bathed in blue light. And then she moves over towards the fire, and then half the room is bathed in ice and half of the room is bathed in fire, just like with Jon and Ygritte at the Battle of Castle Black. So lots of parallels. It could either be like a foreshadowing for an ice dragon actually coming, or that Jon is the ice dragon, or that one of her dragons will die. I mean, there's tons of foreshadowing there. I definitely agree with Yardley. There's a reason why she said, I named them for my brothers, and they're both dead. And there's going to be a loss there. There has to be a loss based on that statement alone.
Yes, I agree. We didn't have any other questions here in the chat at the moment. So we're going to move on to the next scene. But feel free, if you have any questions, go ahead and pop them in the chat. We'll read them as soon as we can work them into the show. And, of course, if you're listening to the podcast, remember you can always join us when we go live by following us on our Facebook page. It's very easy to do, facebook.com, Behind the Iron Throne. Or if you need an easier way to find us, something you can remember, it's really easy to do. All of the links you will ever need, BehindTheIronThrone.com. And don't forget to check out our Patreon to try to, if you can support us, and we can continue to make podcasts in the off season and offer more Patreon levels in the future. #BTIT. We love you guys so much. And it's a lot of fun in the chat room. You definitely want to be here. So let's go over to boom. What is this? It is a Winterfell or Winter Hell. Nah, I guess it's Fell now because everything's better. It's a Stark reunion. And of course, Littlefinger is getting boxed in, and Sansa is being very smart, showing that she's smart, and basically saying, Peter Baelish, to kiss my ass, shut up. Nobody wants to hear you anymore. He does have something very important to say. At least I thought. What are you thinking here, Yardley, about with Winterfell?
Hey, you know what? The only thing that I'm definitely going to highlight is just the fact that when Sansa was doing her thing, showing that she at least had command of the few things that were going on while they were walking. I have to say that when she was asking about when was the longest winter, and it was noted that Master Lewin kept copies of every Raven scroll, and he was going to get that information. So I think that might come into play in the later episodes, because it kind of looked like Littlefinger, just his antenna poked up a little bit. Yeah. So I'll be interested to see how that's going to track. And another thing is that Winterfell is having food issues. They've got enough food for the upcoming year. Sansa tried to address some of that, earlier during that stroll. And I think that might make Cersei's victory at Highgarden another problem for the North at some point, because, if food starts running out there, and if the Lannisters keep control of Highgarden, they're going to have a lot of control of the food that people might need. So we'll see how that turns out.
Jay Angie in the chat makes a great point when Bran shows up, and he's like, so Dr. Manhattan. Like, just his intelligence level has gone above and beyond the common man, and Sansa's hugging him. And I want to know, what you were thinking about this. And I know that he had been through a lot, and we shouldn't expect him to be emotional, but I was expecting some type of emotion, just a little bit. But I can certainly understand that he's been through a lot, and things are going to change. What do you think, Trin?
Yes, I'm a big Sansa fan. I've always been a big Sansa fan. I absolutely love Sophie Turner in this scene, the way that she's transitioned from sort of being creeped out by Littlefinger into, I've got to go take care of some business, into that moment when we get that second Stark reunion in the series. And it was very touching for her and Jon the first time. But when she sees her little brother, like that everybody thought was completely lost, just hope was lost, that's when I was like, oh, I cried. Legitimately. I watched this episode twice. I cried both times during the scene, because I've got so much invested in these characters now, especially the Starks, and I was really, really moved by this. And this is a true star of a facial actress. Like, she does it all. She's amazing, and I love this. And Bran, he's gone through a lot. So I'm gonna cut him some slack on the fact that he's like a robot now, but he's got the weight of the world on his shoulders.
Yeah, I think he's my new Jojen Reed Dream Creeper. That's how much he annoys
Oh
me now.
no.
Yeah,
Come
I'm
on.
gonna have to write a song about Bran now. Bran, why did you make me do it? I gotta say though, Sansa looks absolutely gorgeous with her red hair and her eyes in the backdrop
Like-
of the gray of the north. It's just, she's just beautiful. She's absolutely beautiful, and she has really grown as a character. John, I know you can agree with that because I think this is one of the people that you would love to marry. Am I right or wrong?
This is true. I want Sansa. I love Sophie Turner, amazing actress. She's so beautiful. I mean, Sansa's doing well in charge, and I almost cried seeing Bran back in Winterfell. I mean, this is the first time with like I mean, the Starks are coming back. They're coming together. I love this scene so much. I get why Bran is so cold. He's seen a lot in his time away from Winterfell. And I think you're seeing the beginning of the end for Peter Baelish. I think he's gonna die this year. I think what Peter Baelish wants with that speech is he wants Sansa to take the North and the Vale and go in south and fight Cersei. I think that's what because he wants the throne, but he can't have the throne. He gotta be king of Westeros if he's in the North, trying to fight the Night King. So I think he's trying to get Sansa to kind of go south and fight Cersei. But I think he's gonna reach a little too far. He's starting to his plan is starting to go away here, so he's gonna die. And I don't know if does Highgarden supply the North with food? I mean, that's a long ways away. I don't know if that's
don't
gonna
think
affect
so.
the North because I don't know if they get their food from Highgarden. Maybe Andrea will shed some light on this, but I mean, I think they get their food from the Riverlands, but I'm not sure.
I think they get their own food, but
yeah,
well, Andrea can definitely school us on that. And of course, Andrea, I'm curious. Littlefinger is still trying to influence Sansa, right? I mean, it's got to be. He's hooked on her like glue.
I don't know necessarily if I would say that he's hooked on her. I think that she's a means to an end for him. No outsider can ever hope to hold the North. That's the bottom line. So in order for Littlefinger to sit the Iron Throne and retain control of the North, he has to have a Stark by his side. And that's the bottom line in the situation. And Sansa is the one that he thinks is the most malleable, the one he has the most influence over. So getting Sansa to, conform to the way that he wants her to, be is the number one goal on Littlefinger's plate right now. With that being said, he says to her, nobody knows Cersei like I know Cersei. And she's like, you don't know Cersei better than anybody. She was like, thank you for trying to tell me that, the woman that tried to murder my father, my brother, my mother, is dangerous. She's like, great counsel, he's still trying to manipulate her to, do what, to fight all her wars and see things as they are coming. And ultimately, it actually is really good advice. Everything that's happening is happening all at once, and it actually is happening all at once, which is exactly what Bran was trying to tell Sansa too in the Godswood. Everything is happening all at once. But she needs to try to fight, all the wars on, in her mind at the same time, all at one time, because that's really how it's going to go. But ultimately, he wants her to, get her army together and then, move south so they could focus on Cersei on the off chance that, life does win out. And then, if life wins out, then Cersei's still a threat. So address Cersei first and then go back and, address something else. He wants to move the armies north. But, I mean, ultimately, Littlefinger's a fucking douchebag. I can't stand him.
That's awesome.
I actually did see emotion from Bran when he arrived at Winterfell. He smiled at Sansa. It was a really brief, kind of like an almost, hey, there you are kind of thing. But for Bran, it's not like he hasn't seen Sansa in however many years. He's seen her more frequently than she's seen anybody, for that matter, because he can see her over and over again, even as, they're living their lives right now. He's seeing it in his head, too, at the same time. He's having these visions. And there have been a lot of really great comments on the pages over the last few days since the episode aired. And one of them that I want to point out is that he's saying, I see things that have happened before, and I see things that are happening now. But everyone keeps saying, does that mean that there's confirmation that he's not seeing the future? And I don't think that it is confirmation that he's not seeing the future. It's just that he still has more that he needs to learn. So everything right now is a big picture that he's seeing. It's bigger than anybody else right now. but it's all fragmented. It's all little itty bitty pieces of the puzzle, and he needs to see bigger pieces of the puzzle in order to understand what's actually going to happen, which includes moving into the future. And the more time he spends talking with somebody like Sansa or even Jon or Arya or Peter Baelish or the Maester is just wasted time that he could be using to learn as much as he possibly can, because
like a miracle basically, then Ebron's not going to go. He's not going to really like. He didn't put Sam on the spot, which was nice, and he didn't try to force anything out of Jorah, which was nice. So he was just like, "All right, you're free to go. Get out of here. You know, have a good life." And the handshake was another moving moment here. That the fact that Sam was the one to reach out his hand, because when you really think about it, Jorah hasn't touched anybody for weeks, maybe months. He hasn't had any physical interaction with any human being because he's been scared of spreading it. So it was almost on an intimate level for Jorah to be able to touch another person for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, and John grabbing his hand, or no, I'm sorry, Sam grabbing his hand and shaking his hand. Wow, that took balls.
He wasn't afraid.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to do that. John, would you shake Jorah's hand after that? I mean, would you be a little bit worried?
Well, if I knew I cured him, I'd shake his hand. So, I mean, Sam is really smart, and I think Archmaester Ebros is starting to see that. I mean, and I think Sam is going to get a lot of good information from those scrolls. And I don't know how, but I'm kind of predicting Jorah Mormont's going to kind of be the saving grace for Dany. I don't know how he's going to save her, but he's saved her in the past, and he's going to bring a lot of experience there. But somehow I think he's going to save her, because he's going to find out, or he's already has found out that Dany, all that's going on, because he's at the Citadel. So he's going to find out the information about Dany's losing. So he's going to find a way to help her.
Oh, great points. What do you think, Andrea?
Well, I think that I really love the fact that Jorah said to Sam that he owes his life to Daenerys, and he also owes his life to Sam now, because Sam saved his life and he didn't have one prior to coming to the Citadel. But Sam also let him know that that debt has already been paid multiple times by his father. His father saved him so many times, and then he took the initiative to say, you know what, you're a human. You're not a disease, or you're not a possibly cured disease. You're a human being, and here's my hand, because Sam genuinely sees the good in every single person that he tries, that he comes across. I felt like it was huge, a huge step for Sam and Jorah, specifically for Jorah, because Sam, he. Even Archmaester just kept poking at him with that little, that long stick or whatever. But Sam actually reached out, bare hands and all, was like, here, we're equals. We're the same, And I think that made a huge impact on Jorah in that one moment specifically. And then it was pretty obvious that he was treated. I mean, I don't really have much to say about, that whole entire treatment thing. I do, however, like the fact that there was that bond that was forged between Sam and Jorah, and the fact that there's an open door that they may meet again in the future. I like that a lot. And then the conversation between Archmaester Ebros and Sam. I was wondering, I said this before, that why he didn't get to forge his first healing link based off of that. But I suppose that it may come later. I mean, he may be too. I mean, I don't know what a maester would do with one singular link. But I think it may come later, but I agree with Yardley also that there was that backward reward in giving him all of those scrolls and books and things that needed to be rewritten because they were basically falling to pieces. They were rotting and whatnot. And I got a really good picture of it. There's an open piece of paper that's sitting on the table that has an illustration on it that I'm going to take a better look at later on. But I think that there's definitely going to be more than just possibly a big reveal coming out of that. I think that there's tons of stuff on that table that's going to play a huge part to come. And Sam actually gets to know it intimately because he gets to transcribe all of it. It's not like he has to sneak to read it really fast and then return it before anybody notices it. So that's really exciting for me, actually getting to find out what's going to happen there. But also, I'm really curious to how long it's actually going to take him to be there. And again, how long is Sam going to be at the Citadel before he leaves? Because there's a lot more shit going on, bro. You need to leave. So I'm excited to see what's happening in that situation. And you can see that Eberose is feeling him, but he's kind of testing him at the same time. Don't ask questions, but ask just enough questions. Do what we tell you to do. Don't do what we don't tell you. I mean, don't do what we tell you not to do. But if you do it right, and then no one will get mad at you. So I think it was a really good scene between the two of them. I actually liked it a lot.
Oh, excellent points. Our good friend Goey Demoy says, "How do you think Dany will respond when she sees Jorah? Do you think she really expected him to come back, or does she think his fate was sealed?" What do you think, Yardley?
Oh man, I don't know. Probably like I really thought that was the last I was going to see of you. So we've got to find you a job.
That's funny.
Yes.
I like that. Eric says, "Poor Jorah. The man went through hell and back to get cured of grayscale, and when arrives at Dragonstone, he will find Jon Snow mingling with Dany, and Jon has long claw." That's a good point.
Oh, that's like a double whammy.
Yeah.
That's like I have your family sword and your woman.
Oh, excellent point. And of course, Lord Bag says Sam has proven that grayscale can be cured, and he also goes on to say, "I think the Archmaester gave Sam the books and scrolls to transcribe as a reward because he knows Sam is there for a specific purpose." I could definitely see that. Okay, so let's go to, I believe this next scene is our last scene, isn't it? Oh, no, wait, we got two more scenes.
I think
Right.
it's a blend.
Yeah, it's a good blend. Dragonscale, Casterly Rock, Tyrion plan it gets exposed. And I love the way they shot this, where Tyrion's explaining stuff going on with Casterly Rock, and you got to see the way the battle would have gone south, explaining that his father had it set up this way, it's his father's army, yada, 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 and then showing us, and then we actually got to see what really goes down, which I thought was I love the way they shot this. It was done brilliantly. And of course, we find out that somebody learns from his past mistakes. What do you think about this, Yardley?
Yeah, Jaime essentially learns from his past mistakes, lightly garrisons Casterly Rock. It lures in the Unsullied, which allows Euron an opportunity to flank their ships. The Unsullied are trapped. There's no food there. The only way that they can get out is not by sea, but they would have to walk. And I think just looking at the next on preview, I think it's going to basically come down to Dany attacking the light, garrison of troops that potentially has the gold or going to Casterly Rock. And I think that she's going to choose to attack, Jaime or whatever, that light garrison of troops that are heading back with the gold. And I think that that's going to cause Grey Worm to end up getting killed. So I think it's just going to be one of those things where you've got to make a decision. And inadvertently, Dany might not know that she, messed up them paying the Iron Bank. But also by her making that decision, she won't know that it actually was probably going to lead to the death of Grey Worm.
Oh, excellent point. Trin, what are your thoughts?
In this particular one, this was foreshadowed because we did see a lot of these scenes in the trailers. So we knew there was going to be a battle at Casterly Rock. We knew it was going to be Lannisters versus Unsullied. I was almost expecting the Field of Fire sort of scenes with Dothraki and dragons in this episode, but it turned out to be Unsullied versus Lannisters, which was the plan last episode. But it was a rough go for Team Dany in this, and she's definitely had some strikes against her. Tyrion having strikes against him, not having things work out the way he thought. It's really a bummer because Andrea and John and I were talking about this the other day when we had our little behind the scenes meeting, and we talked about how Tyrion always seemed to be a couple of steps ahead of Cersei, in that he had this great plan laid out in episode 1 and 2, and we thought, oh, this is going to be executed wonderfully well. Turns out Cersei has Jaime, and Jaime and Tyrion grew up together, and so Jaime knows a lot more about strategy and war. He knows a lot more about, tactics and stuff like that. So the fact that Cersei had Jaime with her on his side, and he's learned from his mistakes, like Yardley said. He's the one who's a few steps ahead. Jaime wins this battle.
Okay, fair enough. Yardley, you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just really quickly, just as Trent was saying, some of the things that we're doing is that we're talking about is based off of having saw the trailer for next week. But we know that sometimes trailers don't always tell the same story. So watching the trailer, it would make you think that Danny's going to come in, burn everything up and get the gold. Well, Jaime's pretty smart too. What if they're just a decoy? They might have anticipated that might be the case. They've got their little ballista out there. The gold could be going the back ends, it could just be a total front. So you really never know with people who've been there before, like, hey, you know what I'm saying? It's not a good idea for all of us to have this gold and all of us to be here. It'd be good to kind of split it up. So I think that there's a chance that there might be a double okie doke when we think things are going to go one-sided based off of the trailer.
Nice. I was waiting to hear you say that. I knew okie doke was coming up because this is a classic okie doke right here.
Yeah.
All right, John, what are you thinking, buddy?
Well, first, to respond to Yardley there, the reason I think the gold is getting taken is because the highlight in the trailer of the Bravo saying you'll get our support when we get the gold. So they have to physically get the goal. I still don't think they're getting the goal. I think it's getting hit. I think the Unsullied will make it out of there because, again, they can march on foot. And actually, this could be an advantage for Danny. I know we talked about this yesterday with Trin and Andrea. If they're really smart, they can trap Jaime's army between the Unsullied and the Dothraki because they can still march out of there. And so I don't see that. Also, there's also a disadvantage here, and that is that they now know where Euron's fleet is. What made Euron feared was that they didn't know where his fleet was, and they could attack out of nowhere. Now they know their fleet's at Castle Rock's Bay. So if Danny can get some ships and blockade Euron's fleet in there, they're trapped as sitting ducks. Boom, there goes the dragons, and they're just sitting ducks. So, yes, it was a kind of a strategic loss, but it could also be an advantage for Danny because now you have the Unsullied on land. They can do some damage. They can leave Castle Rock. They're not going to stay. And, you now know where Euron's fleet is, and now you can track Euron's fleet if you have to because you know they're at the bay. So I think this might play out good for Danny. I think John's going to help her somehow. And, this kind of throws back to me when Robb, with Edmure Tully attacking the Lannisters and forcing the Lannisters to retreat and attack Stannis instead. So I think it's a playback to that.
Okay, fair enough. Andre, your thoughts?
Well, actually, I wrote up my first 3 episode predictions before the season started, and one of them was that the Lannister army was going to be stretched so thin that Castle Rock was going to be undermanned as opposed to properly manned, which was going to make it easier for the Unsullied to take it. I didn't, however, expect it to be something that was purposely planned. I felt like it was going to be something that they were stretching their forces so thin because, well, the royal army has always been kind of crap ever since the Targaryens were overthrown. I wasn't quite sure how it was going to work out, but seeing Grey Worm and them go into that situation and then just basically get played, only to find out that Jaime had moved his army forward to Highgarden. I don't know why I didn't connect the dots in my mind. It makes sense now, going back, thinking about the Field of Fire and how I assumed everything was going to work out, being that the meat of the Lannister army was going to be right there in that field. I assumed that we were going to get it this episode, but I'm actually kind of happy that we didn't get it this episode as well, because it makes more sense the reason now, knowing why they tied things up the way they did. I had written that this was a payoff for the comment that Olenna had made to Daenerys, the Lords of Westeros are sheep. We now get to see that even though Tyrion may know Westeros, he's no different than any other man who has played the game, and that they're all easily distracted. And Tyrion, he's distracted by Daenerys and trying to impress her. He's clearly taken by her, and therefore he's doing the same things that he would always do, which makes him predictable. He's also still thinking like a Lannister, which makes him predictable as well. I mean, Tyrion is Tywin's son, and he's more like Tywin than any of the other two. So it makes seeing what his next move is going to be that much more easier. They need to do something that's completely unexpected. And so with Tyrion leading this attack, it is something that's technically more expected than any other attack that we've seen so far. With that being said, I expected it to go down the way that it did. I'm nervous. I wasn't expecting the Ironborn in Lannisport. So that was a nice wrench in my theories. And I don't necessarily know if I think that Euron is still hanging out in Lannisport right now. I just think that he sunk the ships. I mean, you don't want to just hang out where everyone knows you are. So I don't necessarily know if I think that Euron is still there or not. But it doesn't matter where he's positioned at, as long as you can get rid of those tuberets. I don't even know if I said it correctly. That are on those ships, then they're easy to take out. Daenerys did the same thing last season with the Maesters, and in the Bay of Dragons, she took out those tuberets, and then the Maesters kind of fell as it goes. So yeah, I mean, I'm not really that concerned with Euron's fleet as of right now. Daenerys just needs to actually get out there and take matters into her own hands and stop letting Tyrion figure out, or try to make the plays, because obviously they know what to expect when it comes to Tyrion, and he needs to think outside of the box at this point.
John, what are those things called? How do you pronounce it?
It's either catapult or trebuchet, and I think I'm pronouncing
Trebuchet. Yeah.
Trebuchet. Yeah.
Trebuchet.
See, I can't speak it.
Trebuchet.
Okay. You did better than I do.
Thank you.
Yes. So the trebuchets. Somebody actually brought that up in Lord Bag says I was expecting the Unsullied to lay a proper siege to Casterly Rock with siege engines, trebuchets, and whatnot. And Armani says Jaime's getting captured. The Scorpion will fail. Why else would Jaime be carrying a spear? Which is what we saw in the trailer for next season, for next episode. Eric says, typical Tyrion underestimated Jaime and Cersei. Jaime knows Tyrion the best, and he knew they would attack Casterly Rock, and he took the valuables from the castle, so Unsullied can't hold the castle. They took all the food, too. And Robert Martin says, doesn't Dany also have a fleet of ships left over from the slave masters, or were those the ones used to bring the Unsullied to Casterly Rock? And I'll answer this really quick. Yeah, we saw that at the very end of the battle, of the Casterly Rock battle, when Grey Worm kind of stands up and he sees Euron Greyjoy's fleet comes and burns all of those dragon, the ships that had the three-headed dragon on them. And that was the ones left over from the slavers, yes. And then,
there's more.
Well, that's the ones that they used because they had the. What do you mean more?
Well, Daenerys has more ships, the Dragonstone. She just didn't send all of them, but that's a good portion. Considering the Ironborn fleet and the Dornish fleet, and then half of the Targaryen fleet at this point, she's lost a good portion of her ships. Yeah.
Right. Yes. And Renee said Euron made it all the way to Lannisport freaking fast. This time format is so confusing. Yeah, time is fluid. I think Dan and Dave mentioned that at the before the season. They said time is not going to be a fluid thing here. It's not going to make sense the way that it has made sense in prior seasons. So we just kind of have to let that go.
Okay. Is that all of our chat comments? Other than a big shout out to my friend Pam. Pamela from House Roads. Love you, girl. You got to give me a call. We got to talk about that iMac you're going to send my way, right? Yes. And we got to go hang out at the movies. Okay, moving right along. How about the fall of House Tyrell? This was beautifully done. I thought that Lady Olenna is a boss, and I loved everything about this scene. I can't stress how much I love the way the actors are portraying their characters. The dialogue is fantastic. The scenery looks good. The costumes, it's just absolutely amazing. I love it. And, of course, we got to see Bronn out there in the field. So that's awesome. Yardley, what are your thoughts going on here?
You know what? I love the quote, "And now the rains weep for our halls." I thought that was very fitting for the situation. And one of the things that I noted was that Lady Olenna says that she didn't intend for Joffrey to die the way that he did. She meant for him to die, but just not like that. So I don't know if that's a great case to be making in that situation. I thought that she was great, but I also thought that Jamie won the scene, which might be, the opposite of what a lot of people say. And the reason why I think that Jamie won the scene is that he didn't take Olenna's bait, didn't get upset. He might have looked surprised, a little here and there, but he just walked away through halls that a Tyrell will never be in again. And at the end of the day, with the zinger at the end with Olenna saying, tell Cersei that I was the one who did it, why the hell would Jamie honor the request of a woman who killed his son? By him telling Cersei, it wouldn't be like Cersei would say, oh, Tyrion didn't kill Joffrey, so now all of a sudden I like him. She didn't like him going back before Joffrey was born. So I don't see any reason for Jamie to go back, tell the woman that he loves that she did that. And I just don't think that he's going to honor anything as a last stab to House Tyrell.
Excellent points. I was just drinking. Eric mentioned we should drink for Lady Olenna, who went out like a boss. So I just took a nasty, deep drink of this nasty, yucky wine that I mixed together with seltzer water, which was really. I'm beginning to think this is a bad idea that makes this. All right, Trin, what are your thoughts?
Bad decisions. I know all about drinking bad decisions. I respectfully disagree with Yardley on the Jamie one that I think he did a fantastic job at the end, and you could see written all over his face that everything's changed. That information, that little nugget of information that Olenna killed him and she took full responsibility for killing Joffrey, that was a ripple or a butterfly effect that changed so much in the Lannister household and the Lannister family, because Tyrion gets put on trial for wrongly accused, and then Jamie loves him, and whether he believed him or not about being innocent, he let him go, which he knew was going to cause problems between him and his father, him and Cersei, and everybody else. But he still did it because he loved his brother. And then for have Tyrion go kill Tywin, and that really upset Jamie a lot. Then he was like, I'll kill him if I ever see him again. Well, now this changes everything, this information, because Jamie's got to rethink his entire relationship with Tyrion, with how he felt about his father, because, maybe he's going to question his father's motives behind all of that. And he knows Cersei. The premise to this conversation with Olenna was Cersei's terrible. She's the worst thing. You poor soul. You're just going to be, you have no idea. And I think this is a pivotal point emotionally for Jamie in this. But Olenna was a boss. She totally stole that scene, because she was like, gulp, gulp, gulp. I killed your king. Bye.
Awesome. John, your turn, my friend.
I have to disagree with Yardley too. I think Olenna won that scene. She died like a boss, man. I love it. I'm gonna miss her. Jamie looked really pissed when he found out that Tyrion didn't do it, and then Olenna kind of caused Tywin's death. I think Jamie is slowly losing his redemption by staying with Cersei. I said it before, and yeah, overall, she's such a great actor. Did they put up a fight? And Jamie's like, no, and gold roses indeed. I'm like, she was like putting down her own army. I love it. Like, it's so funny. So overall, and I love the visual of that when she looked out the window, seeing the formation of the armies. I thought that was a really great visuals. The visuals this season has been amazing. So, yeah, and Olenna dying like a boss, I loved it.
Okay, fair enough. Andrea?
I was a little sad that they didn't show this Sack of High Garden, but the overall scene was a huge payoff. I liked that he said that he learned a lesson from Robb at the Whispering Wood, but it was really fun because he said there's always lessons in failure, and Olenna retorts, "Yes, you must be very wise by now," like basically saying you fail a lot, dude. So that was a backhanded compliment. I loved how much shade she was throwing at him. And then I do think, in agreement with John and Trin, I think that that Olenna did win this upper hand. I mean, she was old, and she was probably easily one of the oldest people on the show. I mean, how much more life did she have left in her? She was going to die anyways. I don't think that she was, scared of dying by any measure. It was just about, how she died and the basically the vehicle she took to get there. You know what I mean? And so sitting there, and we keep getting reminded of Jaime's of his partiality to Tyrion by Cersei. I mean, multiple times. Your brother that you loved so much that you freed, the one who killed our father on purpose, basically, has now joined with the Dragon King. Queen. She keeps using Tyrion as a way to manipulate Jaime. So Jaime's basically built up this idea, like, she's right, he killed my dad, he killed our son, all of these things. And so now he doesn't feel as bad about making the decisions that he's making because Cersei's been right so far, right? Everything that she says that I've done that's been stupid has been stupid, and I did it, So he has made up his mind that he's going to back his sister, and that they should get rid of all their enemies, this, that, and the third. And then Olenna hits him with this big old loop-de-loo at the very end. By the way, tell Cersei I did it. I want her to know. He was mad, yeah. I mean, but I don't think he was mad at the fact that he finally got confirmation that Olenna killed Joffrey. I think he was mad because he just murdered the one person who could prove to Cersei that Tyrion's innocent. I think the biggest thing here is going to be finding out that it doesn't fucking matter to Cersei whether Tyrion's innocent or not. That's going to be the biggest payoff in the situation. It really makes Jaime have to go back and re-question everything that he believed before. If he's fighting for the right cause, if, Cersei has a point, if she's not the monster that everyone else keeps saying that she is, and if he needs to readdress, how the situation's going to work out for him moving forward. I think that this is going to be a defining moment in the relationship of these two characters moving forward. And then he was so upset with himself that he couldn't bring her back to King's Landing and put her in front of Cersei and make her admit to Cersei, yeah, I killed Joffrey. It doesn't matter anymore. He killed the one person who could clear his brother's name. And I think that, everything else that Tyrion's been through, that Jaime's been through since, that whole entire Oberyn situation, is just came right back, flooding right into Jaime's memory. And I think in this situation, yeah, Olenna won. She won all, with a full hand. She won.
Excellent points. All right, this is the last time we're reading the chat, really. Or are we going to read it for the swords as well? So, Trent, go ahead and read some of the chat, please.
There's so many people who are toasting Olenna.
Yeah.
Like, drink for the Queen of Thorns, which I had it in the show notes, and I know that Andrea had it in the show notes as well. Olenna's nickname was Queen of Thorns, and this episode is called The Queen's Justice, and they ended with her, her death. I think that's the most brilliant thing. So I'm going to say that this was about Olenna for sure. But... Mama Cheryl says Lady Olenna is my spirit animal. 10 shots for the OG Rose, says Armani. And Armani says he'll never truly betray Cersei for Tyrion. So, we're talking about Jaime. That would be a really interesting. What do you think about that, Yardley? Do you think that Jaime would ever truly betray Cersei for Tyrion?
I don't think it would be for Tyrion. I think if he betrays Cersei, it's something that goes a little bit beyond that. I have mentioned this before. I think that no matter what happens in terms of Jaime and Cersei, and we've gotten hints about how they're essentially a package deal, whatever happens with Cersei, I think they both go out at pretty much at the same time if something goes that way. But I don't know. Well, we'll just have to see.
All right. Lord Bags asks, what are the odds that Jaime defects to Dany's side? Andrea, do you have any thoughts on the odds? Jaime defects to Dany's side.
I don't think that Jaime will ever go straight to Dany's side. I think that that's an impossibility. I think that Jaime deciding to do the right thing at some point is a high probability. But necessarily just saying, fuck Cersei, I'm going to go to Dany's side, I think that's just hoping for too much. At the end of the day, Jaime wants to be a knight. He wants to be somebody who defends the weak and protects the innocent. You know what I mean? Like he wants to be this true idea of what a knight is. He wants to be the male version of Brienne, basically. So I think the idea of him, stopping whatever he's doing that, may seem selfish and, putting his all into, the bigger picture, the greater good is something that I can totally see Jaime going into. I don't see him stopping to take sides with one monarch or another. That's not where I see Jaime's loyalties going at this point. So if he decides that he's going to break away from Cersei, it's going to be to go and do something that's bigger than everything else. With that being said, I also agree with you, Yardley. I think that Jaime and Cersei are a package deal. Jaime was born, clutching Cersei's heel as they came into the world, and he's going to leave exactly the same way. Maybe not literally clutching her heel, but following her, like just following her. He's not going to live long after her, and that's the bottom line. They've said it multiple times. When she goes, I go. We're leaving this world the way that we came together. So, I mean, if that's not foreshadowing, I don't know what is.
Oh yeah, great points.
Yeah.
Trent, did you see Shane's comment?
Shane, love you guys. 2 shows a week is awesome. Y'all are my favorite GOT podcast. Shane, we did a show last night, so that makes it 3.
Yep.
But thank you very much. We love you guys too. That's why we do the 2 podcasts a week. But we have a lot to talk about, so of course.
Yeah, absolutely awesome. Okay, so is that good for the chat for now?
Yeah, there's just a lot of celebrating over Olenna.
Awesome.
But yes, definitely. That's all the questions we've got.
Hashtag BTIT, celebrate away. We absolutely love having you guys in the live chat. All right, so we're going to wrap the show up here with our closing thoughts here. We're going to start with our good friend, General Jonathan Stoma, Stark Lover, Lord Duckdarian of the Quasimodo Feather clan. John, give us your favorite scene, your sword rating, unless it's different than last week. Would you say it's the same? And any thoughts before we end the show?
Okay, so my favorite scene is the tie between the monologue with Jon and Dany in the throne room and Olenna's death because she died like a boss. And my sword ratings will stay the same, 4.9 swords out of 5. And I mean, what I love about this episode is the sins of it's kind of like the theme of the sins of the father was heavy in this episode, and I can't wait to next week. So I think some more action is going to go down next week, and I got to go to work, so you can reach me on Twitter, John Fury 316, Instagram, John50, and Facebook, Jonathan Stomas. Thank you guys. Have a good night. Peace.
Thanks, John. See you, buddy.
See ya.
Bye, John.
Lord
Good night, guys.
Duckdarian of the Quasimodo Feathers. I have to write that one down.
There's legit a hashtag in Instagram for Lord Duckdarian. I'm not kidding.
That's
Oh,
awesome.
the thronies.
Yeah, John
awesome.
Duckdarian. I went in there and I went to type it in there, and sure enough, it was right there, a hashtag, and I was like, shut
Nice.
the front door.
You've
guys.
made it, John. You have accomplished it. You've done it.
See you guys.
See you, buddy.
Oh, hey, John.
Okay, Yarly, favorite scene and your sword rating. Maybe if it changed, if it's the same, let us know. And, of course, how people can contact you after the show.
Yeah, well, my favorite scenes are all of Cersei's scenes. That was a highlight of the episode for the most part for me. My sword rating, I'll move it up to 4.5, just mainly because Cersei has had like the best couple of weeks ever as of late. And you can find me on Twitter at militant_marker.
Awesome. Trin, favorite scene, sword rating, same deal, and how people can find you.
Favorite scene's definitely going to be Sansa and Brian reunion because I love my girl Sansa, and I cried twice. So when I could watch a show, cry at a scene, and then watch it the next day and cry at the same scene, like I was like, oh, I can't believe this is happening to me. That's definitely takes the cake. I am going to go pretty high for me because I have pretty high standards. I'm going to give this a 4.5 because we had battles. We had Jon meets Dany finally, and a lot of big stuff happened. And for the first time, I was on Cersei's side for her scenes. So, yeah, this was a great episode, 4.5.
Awesome. And where can everybody find you again, Trin?
At Dovahkiin Trin on Instagram and Twitter.
Awesome. Andrea, Mistress of Whispers, favorite scene, how many swords, and where can people find you for even more great content?
Well, you can always find me right here on Facebook, Behind the Iron Throne, Club Beat It, or right here on our media page. But I did something really great. I changed all of my contact information, so you can find me at one name, A_Richards637, on Instagram, Twitter. You can find me as Andrea Richards on Facebook. But you can find me any of the other social media platforms at A_Richards637. My favorite scene was definitely John's arrival to Dragonstone, and then Drogon actually greeting him the moment he said, "Hey, I'm not a Stark." Yeah, duh. Hi, how are you? That was awesome for me. I'm going to give this episode 4 swords. It was slow moving for me. It took me a few watches, probably like 7, before I actually started to, really put everything together. It took me a while to actually, put my feelings about the show out there, even on our discussions page, because I just wasn't sure how to put it all in. To start with little itty bitty clips, but overall I think that there was a lot of payoff in this episode. It was slow moving. There was a lot of high intense emotional scenes for me, especially the meeting between Jon and Daenerys, and then the Bran and Sansa thing and whatnot. But I will stay with 4 swords. I'm just holding off. I know it's going to get better, so I'm going to stick with 4 swords.
Awesome. I want to thank all you guys for being on the podcast. You do a phenomenal job each and every single week. And, of course, I want to thank some of our friends who we've just made new friends. Of course, we just recorded an episode yesterday, episode 161. A great time with Aziz and Ashaya. Unfortunately, Sean couldn't be there, but maybe next time. Check out that podcast. It was a lot of fun. And a big shout-out to our friend Kyle from Azora Hype. His YouTube channel does a phenomenal job with his podcast, with his show there as well. The History of Westeros, Azora Hype, what a great group of people. Absolutely love them all. And of course, we love you, the hashtag Thronies, hashtag BTit, because you guys are BTitties. You like that? Well, it may not stick. That one may not stick. But I will tell you this. You can join us live on Facebook.com/Behind the Iron Throne. Check out our YouTube channel, BehindTheIronThrone.tv. But more importantly, if you forget about any of the links, they'll be in the description of the podcast, wherever you find your podcast, or it'll be in the description of the video, right in the live area there. The support links are there. But if you forget any of that stuff, we'll keep it really super easy. It's BehindTheIronThrone.com. All the links are there. I want to put a special emphasis on the Patreon. Your support helps to keep the studio moving forward. And, of course, to keep us recording even more episodes come at the end of this Season 7. We want to record more stuff. And with all the... If we can see some real movement on Patreon, we're going to add some really cool bonus stuff and really get back to the fans. Because without you, we do not have a show. So you guys are absolutely awesome. I didn't see any fans, anybody in the chat giving us sword ratings. Did you see any?
We got 4 swords from Lord Bags,
nice.
And we got a 3.75 from DJ.
Awesome.
So that's, it's not a bad episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely cool. So thank you guys for checking out the podcast, and your continued support means the world to us. BehindTheIronThrone.com. You are our BTit Thronies. We love you. We'll see you next time for another great adventure. Keep it real. Keep it BTit. Woo!